This is Elder Tahar, and we're going to go into the breakdown of II Esdras, the 11th chapter and the 12th chapter. And we're going to go right into it, starting from the first verse.
II Esdras chapter 11 verse 1. Then saw I a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle, which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. 2. And I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her, and were gathered together.
Yeah, this is talking about the 12 Caesars. Let's get we're going to read the list down, and you can give the dates that they ruled.
This is from the Harper's Bible Dictionary. It starts with Julius Caesar, but they don't have Julius Caesar on here. So I'll go with Augustus, 27 BC to AD 14. Tiberius, AD 14 to 37 AD. Julius Caesar was the first emperor, the first Caesar. And the other ones are Augustus from 27 BC to AD 14, Tiberius from AD 14 to 37, Caligula from 37 to 41, Claudius from 41 to 51, Nero from 54 to 68, Galba, author of Vitellius from 68 to 69 AD, Vespasian 69 to 79 AD, Titus 79 to 81 AD, and Domitian 81 to 96 AD.
Yeah, so those are the 12 that's spoken of in the beginning of this chapter. Read on.
All right, this is verse 2, 2 Esdras 11 and 2. And I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her, and were gathered together. 3. And I beheld, and out of her feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and they became little feathers and small.
Let me speak on that. Yeah, those winds that gathered together is talking about the nations, because the Roman Empire, that's why it was called an empire, because it subdued the other nations. And one of those nations was the remnant of the nation of Israel, which consisted of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And that was during the time or the reign of Julius Caesar.
It says, and I beheld, and out of her feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and they became little feathers and small. 4. But her heads were at rest. The head in the midst was greater than the other, yet rested it with the residue.
Read that again, please.
Verse 4. But her heads were at rest. The head in the midst was greater than the other, yet rested it with the residue.
That the head in the midst is talking about Julius Caesar, and the others are talking about the rest of the 12 Caesars and Crassus and Pompey, which, by the way, is known by scholars today as the first triumvirate. And when you study on the first triumvirate, that consisted of Julius, Crassus, and Pompey. There was a second triumvirate when Julius Caesar's nephew came into power. His name was Octavian, who sat on the throne as Augustus Caesar. And when he came up into power, that was a second triumvirate, which consisted of Mark Antony and Lepidus. Go ahead.
It says, verse 5, Moreover I beheld, and lo, the eagle flew with her feathers, and reigned upon earth, and over them that dwelt therein. 6.
Can I say something on that? That's basically talking about how the Roman Empire achieved world dominance. And when I say world dominance, I'm talking about that part of the world. Go ahead.
It says, verse 6, And I saw that all things under heaven were subject unto her.
The all things simply mean the other nations and their lands. They took those other nations and those lands.
And I saw that all things under her were subject unto her, and no man spake against her, no, not one creature upon earth.
Let me speak on that. Now they did speak against the Roman Empire, but behind closed doors they had secret plots to take down the Roman Empire, but they couldn't stand in front of the Roman Empire and defy it in front of its face. Because all these, when you read about these different revolutions and these different rebellions, they were secret rebellions, and at a certain time, they would attempt to stand against the Roman Empire to take it down. And during that time period, no one had the power to take it down.
I have a precept. This is Daniel chapter 7, verse 7. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Back in 2 Esdras 11 and 7. And I beheld, and lo, the eagle rose upon her talons, and spake to her feathers, saying, 8. Watch not all at once, sleep every one in his own place, and watch by course.
And like I said, the first Caesar was, you had Augustus Caesar, you had Tiberius Caesar. Now that name Caesar was the actual name of Julius Caesar. So that name was adopted as a title. Just like during the time of World War I, you had Kaiser Wilhelm II. The term Kaiser is a German way of saying Caesar. When they speak about the czars of Russia, czar is a Russian way of saying Caesar. All right?
Verse 9. But let the heads, read 8 again. Watch not all at once, sleep everyone in his own place, and watch by course. Verse 9. But let the heads be preserved for the last.
The heads that I've mentioned, and they're significant because it's going to be we're going to speak about those heads quite a bit in this breakdown. The heads are referring to the first triumvirate, which consisted of Julius Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey.
Verse 10. And I beheld, and lo, the voice went not out of her heads, but from the midst of her body.
Those are the rest of the Caesars, because the head in the midst, like I said, was Julius. I keep saying that. After him was Augustus. After him was Tiberius. After him was Caligula. After him was Claudius, and so forth and so on. So when these Caesars spoke, they spoke at different time periods. One was on top, that one died, another one took its place. That one was on top, like Augustus, until he died. Then the next one took his place. Go ahead.
Verse 11. And I numbered her contrary feathers, and behold, there were 8 of them.
Now, the 8 of them, we're going to briefly go into it, and then we're going to come back to it. And that's the hardest part. When you really look at it, that's the hardest part of this breakdown, the 8 contrary feathers. Some say that the 8 contrary feathers are talking about Caesars that came after the line of the 12 Caesars. But the 8 contrary feathers came within the 12 feathers. So out of the 12 feathers, 8 of them were contrary. And then you had 4 left. Now the most prominent of the 12 was Julius, because we kept speaking about Julius Caesar. And then he had came back, which we're going to read on that as well. It's going to speak on that as Vespasian, which that was the beginning of the the Flavian dynasty, which consisted of him, Vespasian, and his sons, namely Titus and Domitian. All right, go ahead.
Verse 12. And I looked, and behold, on the right side there arose one feather, and reigned over all the earth.
And that's Julius. Now remember, when you go back, he was known as the head. And a head in the midst of the two feathers, right? But now he's spoken of as a feather. Go ahead.
Verse 13. And so it was that when it rained, the end of it came, and the place thereof appeared no more. So the next following stood up and reigned and had a great time. And
it's obvious. If you go into the history of the 12